Hello and welcome to session one after your induction. We're going to look at today at duty one of the Associate Continuing Healthcare Practitioners. So what I'm going to do straight away, I'm going to go up to sharing my screen. So excuse me that I'm looking, but actually I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to move myself to there. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the first block of learning. So let's bring that up and we're going to go to student view. So last week you should have gone through your welcome standards. Just have a look at everything just to make sure that you've gone through all of that and you're happy. You will have seen your recorded session, so that was your induction last week. Here are the knowledge, skills, and the behaviours. So these are the PowerPoint sessions that you're going to need just to really extended reading, if you like. And there you've got those knowledge PowerPoints there. So again, you can just work through those at your own time. So we're going to go straight in to duty one, because month one, which is about your endpoint assessment, your nursing assessment care plans, and human anatomy and physiology, they are what they are. You just need to work through those bits to get where you need to go. Duty one is where your standard actually starts. So that's where we're at. Excuse me. And again, we've got the PowerPoint to go through, and then we've got our material, and then we'll have a look at the assignment. So let's start off by having a look at the knowledge PowerPoint here. So duty one, undertake the management and review of individual care packages, ensuring it continues to meet their agreed health and social care needs, delivered in line with the current national frameworks and additional relevant legislative frameworks. And on here, you've got your link to the Institute for Apprenticeships, and you can download this PowerPoint here. So there's quite a lot in this PowerPoint. The learning aim then for this session is to undertake the management and review of individual care packages, ensuring it continues to meet the agreed health and social care needs. Through this, we're going to meet some key milestones, and the key milestones are kind of reflective points, if you were, but they're specifically designed for the Associate Continuing Healthcare Practitioner role to meet the requirements of those specific skills, knowledge, and behaviours. So in this class, you can see an array of those knowledge requirements that we're going to cover. So let's start off with the key milestones, which to begin with is your initial assessment. So in the previous month, we did the module around nursing assessments, and we've started to look at how nursing assessments are conducted and the frameworks in which they work. So here, starting off with then, we have an initial assessment. And in the initial assessment, we conduct a comprehensive assessment or a systematic assessment. So when we mean by systematic, we mean kind of almost head to toe of the whole person of health and well-being. And in that comprehensive assessment of individuals' health and social care, it includes the physical, emotional, and social requirements. Through that, we identify the goals and outcomes of the individual's wishes to achieve their care package, and we consider the input from the individual, their family, and their relatives. So there's different frameworks and models here, there's different policies and procedures in different organisations, but ultimately we're looking at a biosocial model of care, trying to get that assessment from head to toe in. And if you've never done this before, I always think the activities of daily living are a great starting point because it covers the main key points. I know that most of your online care plan systems will cover this. But again, when we think about this role, you're going to be writing, you're going to be recommending, should I say, things to help improve somebody's health and well-being, and you're making a decision whether or not somebody needs additional funding to meet those needs. So you have to be able to conduct a comprehensive assessment of individuals' health and social care needs. And the reason for that is, if it's not evidence-based, when you submit your application for the additional funding, basically what will happen is it'll be rejected, and it'll be rejected based on the fact that there's no evidence to support your request. So if you want your continuing healthcare assessment to be successful, it's about the way in which we carry out that comprehensive assessment. It's the evidence tools in which we use, making sure that they're contemporary. So in other words, they're up to date, and that we remain factual and evidence-based. So that's kind of what we're looking for in that comprehensive assessment. Overall, during that comprehensive assessment, it's important to have an understanding of the structure of the human bodies. And again, in the previous module above, you have got your anatomy and physiology unit. I appreciate it is a massive unit. It's designed for you just to dip in and out, go back to over the year, because again, it's quite comprehensive. And if you want to write a good continuing healthcare assessment, you need to understand the functions of the human body and then altered physiology. So what happens when things go wrong? Because if you're going to be writing recommendations for people, you clearly need to have a good understanding of what's going on, and then with altered physiology, what's going on in the support somebody needs. So the aim of this comprehensive assessment is to have the knowledge to help evaluate and address individuals' overall well-being, and the assessment process involves considering various aspects. So this includes a physical health assessment. So in the physical health assessment, here we've got the whole person approach as a model. We've got physical health, emotional and mental. So health and well-being, that's how we see this. So under our physical health, this includes vital signs, blood pressure, heart rate, body system, cardiovascular, respiratory, and any existing medical conditions or illnesses. So say, for example, we have COPD. How's that managed? Are they, is it medication? Are they having physiotherapy? What's going on here? And alongside that physical health assessment, if we're going to be taking vital signs, if we're going to be doing that assessment, we need to understand the structure of the human body to help identify potential issues, and obviously offer appropriate care interventions. So for example, if we're taking blood pressure and we're getting a reading consistently, let's say 160/80, are we going to be thinking about hypertension? Are we going to be thinking about doing or recommending that regular monitoring, and then looking at medication to help reduce the high blood pressure? So physical health assessments are generally structured. We have all of that. Again, if you're new to this, you can go back to our CPD modules, and in our CPD modules, we cover the CHAPS program, the Care Home Assistant Practitioner program, and in there you learn all of that stuff. So it gives you a really comprehensive clinical overview of the functions of the human body. Equally, we look at the emotional and mental health assessment. So here we're looking at the mental state examination. I think the mental state examination is a good assessment tool for something like this. It gives you the holistic overview of their mental health and well-being. And again, understanding how their emotional and mental health affects their physical health. So it could be the fact that they're on things such as lithium, or they could be on mood stabilizers. And are those mood stabilizers creating obesity issues? Is it creating hypertension? Is it creating that high blood pressure there? So just understanding how the physical and mental health come together is really important, because you generally find they're not separate, but they're two of the same thing, so they're generally linked. We also need to carry out our social assessment. So the social assessment looks at understanding individual social requirements, involves examining their social interaction, their support systems, their relationships, their community involvement. And again, we know that health and social care comes together. So understanding their social impacts and determines their quality of life. And it may be simple things such as they could be in an area where they're in a food desert. So what I mean by that is they're in an area where all they've got locally is just takeaways. So all they're eating is high fat cholesterol foods because that's all they can get their hands on. Excuse me. And understanding this is really important when we piece it together, because they may not have that support network to be able to cook, to be able to go shopping, and therefore they're going to need this additional support to maintain their health and well-being. So the knowledge of the structure, the function of the human body, the certain person, and the health and social care professionals can give a holistic understanding of an individual's need and provide that tailored support. We are clearly looking at a comprehensive approach to optimize health and well-being by addressing physical, emotional, and social aspects. So the biosocial model, thinking about all those areas. Once we identify those problems, we're going to be looking for those goals and those outcomes. So here we're looking at how do we provide effective care and support for the problems that we've identified through the systematic assessment. How do we then put together our goals, outcomes, and interventions? So, for example, let's say we've got somebody who has type 1 diabetes. The goal might be very simple, personal-centered. I need to manage my diabetes better, or I need to make sure that my diabetes remains in normal range of 4 to 7. Great, that's a very simple goal. The outcomes of that goal is how do we get there? What is it we're going to do? So thinking about the physical health, the mental health, and the social aspect. So from the physical health point, it might be the fact that we need to ensure that we've got the right equipment, the right psychoeducation on how to use the equipment for glucose testing. We would need a diabetes passport to manage risk and to identify what to happen if we go hyper or hypo. We're going to be looking at nutrition and diet to help the balance of the meals. But then it's okay coming up with all this advice and guidance, but then do they need the social support to get the shopping for the food? Will they then need support in preparing high quality food? And then again, if they're up through the night urinating as a byproduct, how does that affect their quality of sleep and their mood and all this stuff? Equally, how does this then affect their mental health and well-being? So each part then has their own outcomes to address those goals. Ooh. Bear with me, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so improve physical health is what we just talked about. Look at that enhanced emotional support and increase that social engagement. So addressing those 3 areas is absolutely key when thinking about goals and interventions. We want to promote independent living. So how do we do that? And this is that activities of daily living. Then, so how do we manage, if we think about diabetes, for example, again, how do we manage personal care? Are they able to move and mobilize? Because if they don't, are they at risk of pressure sores or pressure injuries? So just thinking about that, how are they going to get around their house? How do they wash themselves? How do we make sure that if they're having personal care, that they're drying their skin correctly to avoid, again, lesions and ulcers, etc. And then ultimately, does all of this look at then an improvement towards their quality of life? And it may be then that we need to do some types of referrals and understanding your local areas. So at this point, we could be thinking about social prescribing. We could be thinking about the IAP services, or we could be thinking about, there's a website called the Hub of Hope, or the Hub of Hope. And within that, they're able to key what it is they're looking for and we can provide additional support there. So looking from input from individuals, obviously this is a person-centered, a whole person approach. Their family and the relevant other healthcare professionals is going to be needed for that collaborative approach. So again, if we're thinking about the diabetes, will they have a diabetic nurse? What's their involvement going to be if this has affected their weight management? Do we have a dietitian? If there is some mental health there or underlying unhealthy habits, shall we say, around food, do we need some psychology support there? So how do we bring that all together and manage that? And part of your role in the CHC assessment is to navigate all of that. So input from the individual, it's obviously crucial to have a person-centered care plan. After all, it needs to be managed. It needs to be their goals. They need to feel that they've been listened to. And again, involvement from others, such as family members or caregivers, gives you a valuable insight to their ability and then the additional supporting which is going to be needed. Finally, then, looking at that collaboration is going to be vital for you to get the evidence that you need for your CHC assessment, because ultimately the evidence will come from those professionals as well. So how does this diabetes affect their physical health? How does this diabetes affect their mental health? How does this diabetes affect their social health and well-being? And I'm using that as a straightforward problem, but clearly for continuing healthcare support, we're going to be much more complex, or when the diabetes is completely uncontrollable. And maybe this is somebody who's obviously very dangerously high, where the diabetes affects the mood and puts them at constant risk. And it may be they've had lots of falls and you need to refer for the falls team and things like that. We need to recognise their symptoms, so how their physical health, mental health and social affects symptoms. And we obviously have the process of a good day, bad day. I tend to work on, let's look at the strength-based approach. What can you do for yourself? That's a good day. And now let's talk about what a bad day looks like. And can we somewhere meet in the middle to have a very fair identification of symptoms? Because ultimately, if you write everything up as a bad day, it's always going to seem much worse. But what's the frequency of that bad day? And then once we've got our systematic assessment done, we've looked at their physical health, their mental health and their social health, we've identified those goals. Are we then going to look at the nursing interventions or the medical interventions for optimization of their health? So medical or medication, are we going to do a referral to the GP to get medicines, therapies? We can go online and look at the IUP services, the Hub of Hope, or we can go into social prescribing. And again, a lot around their living requirements might just be a simple Care Act assessment that they need. Maybe they just need adaptations from a trusted assessor or something. So just thinking about how we can manage all of that. And then finally, the monitoring and management of this. So having an understanding of all this is really important, how it impacts everything. But equally, how does that then affect their behavioural, the way that they think? And again, looking around things around capacity and behavioural stuff. And then obviously making those adjustments to the individual. So carrying out a systematic assessment of an individual is such a comprehensive piece of work. It does take a huge amount of skill and knowledge to do this effectively. And when you go through the modules, you will see some case studies just to give you that flavour of how you manage their physical health, mental health, and social well-being. So in summary then, for your first duty, conducting a comprehensive assessment of an individual's health and social care needs involves evaluating their physical, emotional, and social requirements. Understanding the structure and the function of the human body is essential to identify potential health issues, or altered physiology, looking at how that may affect them in the future and the interventions that you're going to need for that. By considering the input of individuals from their family and relatives and other healthcare professionals, you're able to develop a personalised care plan that addresses those individual needs and goals. Additionally, knowledge of common health conditions, their use of medication and treatment options in recognising symptoms and help planning interventions and obviously monitoring the progress of those effectively. And by integrating all three of these elements, the care professionals can then tailor support to promote the overall optimization for well-being and ensuring a person-centered experience throughout their continuing healthcare process. So, excuse me. There is a case study here for you to have a look at. You've got Mr. Smith's physical assessment reveals he has high blood pressure, limited mobility due to arthritis. So we've got a couple of issues there straight away, haven't we? The assessment of his emotional and well-being relieves symptoms, anxiety and depression. That's not surprising, impacting his overall quality of life. Mr. Smith expresses feelings of isolation and a desire for more social engagement through discussions with Mr. Smith. It's identified that his goals are to manage his blood pressure more effectively, so there's your goal, improve his mobility, and carry out his daily activities independently, and alleviate the feelings of loneliness. Okay, so there's a fair bit there. He also wants to participate more in the community with his activities. Mr. Smith's family, including his daughter and wife, actively participate in the assessment process. They provide insight to his emotional state and offer support in understanding his social requirements. Healthcare professionals, including his primary healthcare, so doctors, his doctor and physical therapist, contribute by providing more medical history, treatment options and recommendations for managing his physical and emotional health. So here, the questions are, think about that case study. Question 1, conduct a comprehensive assessment for Mr. Smith. So here we're identifying his physical, emotional and social requirements. So his physical is obviously his blood pressure and his arthritis. So we're looking at blood pressure and pain management. His emotional, we saw, was the anxiety and depression, and maybe there's some isolation problems there as well to think about. And then the social requirements is about accessing the community more and probably a bit more involvement for his quality of life. So what specific health issues are there? So we've talked about high blood pressure and arthritis. What emotional challenges does he face? So that's going to be his anxiety and low mood. And then what social support systems are currently available to him. So he has family, he has a support network, but he's clearly feeling isolated and wants to go out a bit more. So question 2, determine the goals and the outcomes for him. So he's given you a very clear goal, hasn't he, around his blood pressure, but around his arthritis, one would assume he would want to go about managing his pain or alleviating pain, or at least improving his mobility. What emotional well-being support would you give? So again, managing the symptoms of depression, and it may just start off really small things to help improve his quality of life. But has he had a referral to the IAP service, or has he, speaking to a mental health nurse? Have we looked at things around maybe online CBT, etc. there? And how does his social connections and support there? So how do we improve his social supports? So again, that may just be looking at trying to get him into the community and managing activities in the community. So understanding your community networks would be really important. And finally then, consider the inputs from his family and relative healthcare professionals. So how does Mr. Smith's family perceive his physical, emotional and social needs? So you could probably see that they're concerned, that they obviously want to support him to get out and do all these things. What insight can the healthcare professionals provide based on their expertise and experiences there? So you might have somebody from the cardiovascular team managing his blood pressure, or it could be just the doctor with statins. You might want to do some social prescribing. So it may be the fact that we can join up with a local group. So down in Hastings, we have a thing called Active Hastings, where we as professionals can refer somebody. They get access to all of this, things like basketball, football, and all these different things that they could do to help manage that. And again, that social activity, so lots of different things there to think about. And then how can their input contribute to developing that comprehensive care plan? So ultimately, listening to his story and then going back to the professionals saying, well, okay, here's what I think, what more can you do? So, for example, with his blood pressure, can he have statins to manage that? With regards to his arthritis, can he have a referral to the pain clinic? Or, you know, is he on pain medication already? And is it the pain medication that's contributing to the depression or constipation and basic things like that we need to think about? Right, lovely. So I'm not going to run through those answers because you can do that in your own time. So the learning aim here then is to undertake management and the review of the individual care package, ensuring it continues to meet the agreed healthcare and social needs. So we know that care planning is a development of an individual care plan based on the assessments that find their goals. We need to ensure that the care plan outlines specific interventions to support services and resources to meet the needs, and we need to collaborate with the families and healthcare professionals. The individualised care plans should be done after conducting a comprehensive assessment of the individual health needs, looking at their emotional, physical, and social well-being. And then the requirements, the next steps are to develop the individualised care plans based on the assessments defined as the goals. So once we've done all of our background, we've collected all our evidence, we've talked to all the people, we're able to then structure really solid care plans that are personal centred, co-produced, that give very clear direction on how to improve the quality of life and well-being. The individualised care plan should be considered the principles should consider the principles of infection control, ensuring that they're in a safe, healthy environment for the individual. This includes measurements such as hand hygiene, proper food waste cleaning protocols, again, promoting vaccinations, so health advice, and adhering to the principles of the care plan. So looking at reduction of spread infections, etc. And when we think about infection control at this point, obviously, if somebody's unwell, making sure that their environment in which food is being prepared is key, because if somebody does have high blood pressure, arthritis, etc., maybe they might have a lower immune system. They could catch something, become unwell, and that just causes a further problem. So equally, just making sure the basic principles of universal infection control procedures are adhered to. So in addition to infection control procedures, and again, thinking about universal infection control procedures, how is the person maintaining personal hygiene when they're going to the toilet, how they manage their waste elimination, when they're cooking and cleaning, how can they manage that? And I've done a lot of domiciliary work in my time, and some of the homes that I've been in, quite frankly, should be condemned. The problem is there's this really fine balancing act of accepting somebody's environment because that's the way that they live, to is the environment safe for the individual, or for at least for the caregivers. And I would argue that there is a very fine ethical dilemma line there. And in the past, it has got down to the point where I have felt it's unsafe. It's not down for me to be judgmental, but there is the well-being of others to consider as well. So sometimes I've had to call either the fire brigade out to do their risk assessments, or environmental health around animal welfare control, because nobody wants to be judgmental, but there is this thing that we need to consider: the impact of living environments. Is it conducive to health and well-being? And whilst I accept the fact that we are not there to manage people's homes, I use the word homes very loosely there, but we're there to provide a safer environment as best we can with the tools and the system that we've got, because obviously we come up against budget problems. So a lot of that then is about collaboration, working with those care plans, looking at the principles of funded nursing care, or looking at joint care packages of care. So that could be through social services, that could be through Care Act assessments, but just thinking about where that funding is going to come from for all of this additional stuff that you've care planned for. And the involvement and understanding of the eligibility criteria and the requirements for assessing these care packages and incorporating them into the individual care plan. So individuals' health and social care needs then, so after conducting the comprehensive assessment, after developing that, we identify the individualised care plans. It's crucial to ensure that the care plans outline specific interventions, so they're outcome focused, so we can track progress or we can track deterioration. We have the right support services, the right resources to meet the needs of individuals' health and social care needs. This includes identifying specific actions and interventions that will be addressed through their physical, mental and social wellbeing requirements. And sometimes you're going to be told no, and then you have to go back to problem solving, critical thinking. So it's not the fact that everyone's going to get what you're prescribing, but it's about justifying it and looking at the risk and the consequence. So an appropriate care package is addressed by various elements of specific needs and goals. It includes a range of interventions such as support services, resources that are tailored to the individual needs to meet those physical, emotional, and social requirements. We need to ensure that the care plans effectively address the individual's health and social care needs, and it's crucial to outline the specific interventions and the support services and resources required, because that's where your access for funding is going to come in. So it's the justification of why you need what you need. So when we look at the interventions to meet the care plan, to meet the goals that have been identified in that whole person approach, which is strength-based and outcome-focused, we're clearly going to specify the intentions that will be implemented to address the things that we've looked at. And we need to then look at the involvement of medical treatments, therapy sessions, counselling, rehabilitation programs, etc. I would say through my experience that we don't do enough preventative work. We seem to have to wait for things to get a whole lot worse before we can make referrals. Again, I accept the fact that there are limited resources, but what we want to do is promote health and well-being. So, for example, for an eating disorder referral, they genuinely have to pretty much be, I can't remember what the BMI is, but it is incredibly underweight. They are incredibly unwell by the time you get to a referral. And it just seems that if we could bring that forward a bit and didn't allow them to get so unwell, that actually recovery may be a bit more quicker and the interventions may be a little bit less. And I just wonder whether there is more evidence to suggest that prevention is better than cure, kind of thing. So the more we can do to promote things and offset them, because let's face it, we know if you are having an unhealthy lifestyle, so if you're drinking too much, you're eating too much, you are going to have high blood pressure, you're at risk of stroke and heart attacks, and obviously your mental health and mood. We can do simple prescribing such as daily exercise, going for a walk, healthier eating, things that don't cost much, or you could get pretty much for funded or for free through third sector charities and organisations. And that would then save this knock-on effect down the line for all of this HCA and all this additional funding, where actually we need to use that money on those that truly, truly need it, where a lot of the work we can do is more preventative through psychoeducation, through government initiatives such as smoking cessation, alcohol reduction campaigns, eating 5 a day, 0 to 5K. I mean, there are so many programs out there to help people. It really is about how well you are tapped into all of that knowledge. And again, support services. So looking at support services, you know, can we have a named carer in the home? So a family member being a primary carer is going to save the taxpayer a lot more money than having to go through home help. You know, it's going to be a huge difference in cost. Equally, care in their own home is going to be far cheaper than going into residential care. Sometimes just by prescribing or recommending a bit of respite care for the family can give people the break that they need so people don't have to go into long-term residential nursing care. So there's lots of support networks out there. It's really down to you and your understanding of the service that you have within your area. So patient-centred plans then collaborate with the individual families and relatives, healthcare professionals. It involves all the stakeholders, and obviously it is that collaboration. So we know that involving the individual, making them own their care, making them involved in it at the centre of it, puts their input, shapes the care to reflect their unique set of circumstances of what they need. And then obviously engaging with that family member really helps drive that forward. Consulting with the other healthcare professionals will give you the evidence in which you need for your CHC assessment, and ensuring that everyone's working on the same page regarding the interventions, because what you tend to find is where we all silo work, there's nobody pulling it all together. So you might have the GP managing pain, you might have a mental health nurse managing the mental health, you might have social services trying to manage the social service bit. But actually, if you pulled that all together and somebody's sitting there coordinating it, such as a care coordinator in a local GP surgery or within your organisation, you might find that by addressing the social problems, this alleviates some of the mental health problems, which then reduces the anxiety around eating and discomforting, which reduces the cholesterol problem. And I think sometimes we just over-medicalise problems. So it is the case of just saying, well, what more can we do there to support things? It doesn't always have to be a financial burden. So obviously, in summary then, conduct a comprehensive assessment of individual health and social care needs, followed by the development of a care plan, looking at those goals and assessments, and incorporating your basic principles of infection control, safeguards and equality and all of that stuff. We look at appropriate care packages that are tailored. We look at the interventions and support services and resources to meet the needs of individuals, and we can collaborate with those families and multidisciplinary people. So another little case study, just for you to think about and ponder on. Jane is a 65-year-old woman who has recently been diagnosed with diabetes and is experiencing difficulty in managing her blood sugar. She suffers from chronic back pain and has limited mobility. Jane's goal is to improve her overall health and quality of life whilst effectively managing her diabetes and back pain. So, question 1 then. Develop an individualised care plan based on the assessments and findings. What would you outline in the care plan, and why is collaboration with this individual family and relatives important? So when we think about this, there's a lot of things there that we need to take into account. So the goals there, looking at goal 1, that's to maintain and target good blood sugar levels. The intervention there, education, eating healthy habits, collaboration or referral with a dietitian, encourage regular exercise, consider with Jane's healthcare provider to ensure appropriate medication management. So that's the referral to the GP, medication management, schedule regular follow-up appointments. And then for the pain, the chronic pain and mobility, obviously conduct a thorough assessment, collaborate with physiotherapists, look at exercises, provide body machines or techniques for lifting and moving to prevent further back strain. So that might be an OT referral, explore pain management strategies such as hot and cold or inflammation or anti-inflammatories, There are alternative therapies out there. It doesn't all have to be medication. There are things, you know, massages and acupuncture and stuff like that. Look at modifications in the home and explore and encourage Jane to engage in activities that she enjoys to promote relaxation and stress reduction. So again, lots of different ways of managing that, and hopefully you can see in those two examples, you've got your goals, they're very clear there and there, and you've got a set of interventions. And again, to improve the overall quality of life, intervention there, carry out the comprehensive assessment, collaborate and set realistic goals, educate, always lots of self-educate, sleep hygiene, stress management, social activities and hobbies, provide support and resources for smoking cessation if applicable. There are some government targets. If you work in a GP setting, you're doing this, you'll have your own QOF targets that you'll need to do. Connect with Jane to support groups. There are diabetic groups, there's pain management groups, there's stuff online, there's stuff via Zoom. And then just regularly evaluate the care plan and adjust that. And then finally there, answer 2 then, to meet individuals' health and social care needs effectively. We obviously need to include information around names, age, information, demographics, religious beliefs, cultural impacts, etc. Goals and objectives there to clearly state individual health and social care needs identified through the assessment and collaboration with individuals. Make the goals specific and measurable, so SMART, and assessment of findings, then obviously evaluate those and review them. To meet the individual health and social care needs effectively, a comprehensive care plan should also outline the following elements. So you've got your care plan interventions, looking at specific interventions. We talked about earlier about the care coordinator, and then looking at other support services. So there's lots of things to think about there. And then finally then, to kind of pulling this all then together, we then need to think about emergency plans. So what happens in planned events and unplanned events? So what happens if the diabetes becomes dangerously high? How's that managed? Who's going to be involved? And then how often is that going to be reviewed? And then finally then, for answer 3, when we collaborate with individuals in their family, we obviously want to get that holistic understanding about what's going on, having that comprehensive information. We need to look at individual empowerment, involving people in the family, the planning process, because there may be things that they're able to do. You know, family members want the best for their family members. So it might be, oh, well, look, we could do some batch cooking, we could do this, we could do that. Great. Sometimes it just takes that conversation to see what support there is. And again, looking then at that collaboration, it is about communication, building trust. It is about shared decision making, and it is about comprehensive care coordination. So somebody managing all of those strings there. Equally then, adapting and being responsive, so making sure that things are reviewed, making sure that everyone's kept up to date, and then the overall collaboration of the individual with their family and relatives and healthcare professionals are obviously updated. Wonderful. So moving on then to undertake management and review of individual care packages, ensuring it continues to meet the agreed needs. So here then, once we've done our assessment, we've done our care plans, we're now in the process of reviewing those. And care package implementations, so they should obviously be coordinated care. They should be organised and delivered by the necessary services and interventions and support outlined in the care plan. Somebody should be responsible for monitoring the process or the provisions of care to make sure that they meet the agreed needs, and then facilitate the communication and coordination. So again, quite a lot going on there, because you've got a lot of goals and interventions, and everybody needs to be doing their piece for that to work. So we need to introduce the importance of critical thinking here and problem solving skills in healthcare, because 9 out of 10 times when you talk to somebody, they've either got a problem or they've got a desire. So the problem might be, I can't manage my diabetes. And the question that we need to be doing here for critical thinking and problem solving is because. And what I mean by that is, I can't manage my diabetes. Well, why? What is it that's stopping you? So thinking because, oh, I'm unable to get fresh fruit. Because, oh, I don't have enough money. Because I'm on benefits. Because I'm unable to work. Right, okay, so the root cause here is we're unable to work, we haven't got enough money, we're on benefits. So the problem solving then to all of this could be, well, okay, when was the last time you did a benefits review? Who was responsible for doing that? Is there any way, if you had some social prescribing for problem solving, have you spoken to charities like Turn to Us or Debt Advice UK? Or is there any way that we can restructure your benefits? Can we access you into different support groups? Is there a way that we could do batch cooking to save money? So there is always a solution there somewhere. It just takes that critical thinking. So it's not the fact that I can't prepare myself food, but what you're hearing is I can't prepare myself food. That's what you've heard. Unless you do the because, you're never going to get to the root cause. And root cause analysis is that 7 whys, why, just keep questioning until you get to the problem. And when you get to the problem, you can just build it up really quick. Great. Well, now I know what the actual trigger is. We can manage around this. But me then going, well, okay, let's get you home help to help prepare your food doesn't address the initial problem, which is you haven't got enough money to buy the ingredients. So what you need first, before all of that, are these things in place, rather than just going straight in. I'm waffling a bit, but hopefully that makes sense. Obviously, we need to emphasize the significance of assessing complex care situations and identifying appropriate solutions. So yes, there are always quick wins, or as we say in the business, there's low-hanging fruit which you can pull and address quite quickly. The problem is, does that actually fix the problem? So we go to the analogy here about, yes, give a man a fish and he can feed his family for the day, but give him a rod and you can feed his family for life. Is it the fact that actually we are offering too much support and too much help, and inadvertently we are de-skilling people in that process? So what can we do to promote independence, to promote empowerment, to help facilitate these goals and interventions to work a bit better? And again, it is about going down to the because, getting right down to that root cause analysis to find out what's going on and why. We need to explain the role of critical thinking and make informed decisions in their best interest for the individual. So again, unless we critically analyze, and critically analyzing is that analysis, that deep dive, really pushing until you can't get an answer, then we can work out what's in the individual's best interest. Because actually, is it in your best interest that I provide you home help? Well, probably not. What's more in your best interest is the fact that we have somebody review your benefits. We could look at cost-effective ways of saving you money. Maybe there are things that we can do for batch cooking, or maybe we can get you some vouchers for the food banks or something. But it is that critical piece that needs to be done to then say to somebody, look, this is why we're making these decisions. And a lot of the times when things get declined, people feel, oh, well, I don't understand the rationale for declining that. I need this. Well, is that what you need, or are there unmet needs that haven't yet been seen? So it is this critical piece of work that needs to be done. Anyway, I digress a bit. And then we need to highlight the need to anticipate and address potential challenges and obstacles in managing their care packages. So again, we have to be realistic with this. I don't understand why we overpromise things to people that just can't then be delivered. It provides false hope, and then it gives somebody a long place to drop. What we need to be doing is setting realistic expectations. So if we say to somebody, look, yes, I can see that you need care and stuff. What is the likelihood that you're going to get that care plan sorted out overnight? And it's about balancing risk, isn't it? So if this person's on their own and they're vulnerable and they've got deteriorating health, then they're going to be obviously a lot more of a priority than somebody that's living with their family. And I was in a situation a couple of years ago. I went to this two homes. I had a 99-year-old gentleman who was bedbound. Bless him, loveliest man on the planet. Soaring towards his end of life, but you wouldn't have known. He just has such a lovely outlook. And towards his end of life, we did a request for some additional hours, so he wasn't on his own through the passing. Obviously, that got rejected. Only needs X, Y, Z. It's anticipated death. Etc. etc. Yeah, I went to another home, and it was a home that had got a husband and 3 children, all able to work, all running around the home doing things. But because the mother didn't feel it was her children's place to clean, she needed domestic support. And because it wasn't her husband's responsibility to provide her meals, she needed somebody to do that. Well, meanwhile, we've got more vulnerable people not receiving the care that they should be getting because this package had been funded to provide domestic support and cooking where there are able-bodied people in the house to do it. So there are ethical dilemmas that need to be addressed, and a bit more transparency, I think, needs to happen through the assessment process, because if you are not in a vulnerable position, I'm not suggesting at all that you are not entitled to care, but I would be assessing that as probably lower level risk compared to others, and maybe potentially something in the future rather than an immediate now. But again, that's my personal opinion. I guess that's entirely down to everyone to make their own analysis of that. So critical thinking and problem solving skills play a vital role in healthcare due to the complex and dynamic nature of the industry. And again, just an example of what we were talking about here. So here are some key reasons why these skills are important. So decision-making in healthcare is something we regularly do. It is complex, they are high-stake decisions, and they can have significant impact on patient outcomes. Critical thinking allows them to analyze and evaluate information objectively, and that's the most important part. You are able to consider the perspectives. You are able to make informed decisions based upon the best available evidence. And that's what we've been talking about, evidence-based decisions. So if you can't back it up, it's unlikely it's going to be supported because you're not using evidence. You're just giving an opinion. Problem-solving skills then enable healthcare professionals to identify and address challenges and in patient care more effectively. Patient safety is critical, so patient safety, critical thinking skills are an essential problem around patient safety. Healthcare professionals must be able to recognise and share and address potential risk. So again, just talk about those 2 stories there. One was a 99-year-old gentleman who was bedbound on his own. One was somebody who had a family unit. Yeah. So we need to identify norms. And again, we need to look at what's appropriate or prevalent. We need to be able to mitigate potential harm. And that's not because we're being forced into a decision because we've got somebody screaming and shouting at us, but we need to be fair and balanced because resources are, we can't give everyone what they want. It's just not physically possible. So we need to make sure that the resources are going to the right people for the right reasons. So we need to apply those critical thinking skills, and that can be anticipated and addressed by potential complications and address the reliability and the diagnostic test and treatment. and take into account preventative measures to ensure patient safety. So again, thinking about critical thinking and problem solving skills play a complex, vital role in healthcare due to the complex and dynamic role. So here we've got clinical reasoning. So for example, if we talk about those diabetes, if we talk about hypertension, clinical reasoning is, we know if you remain high for a long period of time, you can go into a coma. That's clinical reasoning. We know if your blood pressure remains high for a long period of time, you have the potential to have a stroke or a heart attack. Clinical reasoning. We've got the collaborative problem solving. So, okay, what do we do to help address this? So looking at those interventions, and we don't expect everyone to be an expert in all those areas. That's why we do the multidisciplinary approach. And then again, we need to look at the adaptability there. So looking at that landscape about new research or technology to help reduce the cost. So critical thinking, problem solving skills are obviously really important. Continuous improvement, that quality improvement cycle is key. And again, looking at innovations and solutions. So we had a care package commissioned for a visually impaired person to manage their diabetes. They felt that they were constantly being hounded with us knocking on the door and trying to manage it. And in the end, we just got them on WhatsApp and said, right, okay, well, let's just show us remotely. We could hear the clicks. They were able to put the insulin up to the camera, so for us to verify that the correct dose, and they were able to do it remotely. So that was saving the travel time of the carer, that was saving this constant going out, and just by using innovation. And you know, we need to move towards AI technology and innovation a lot more. All of these calls that we have for people to manage medications, when there is now technology out there that dispenses medication on a regular basis and only gives what you need. So does that need a carer on a face-to-face visit now? Or is that something that can be done through a dispensing system and a phone call via a video camera? We've got wearable technology that tracks people, you know, so if we've got a Dole's problem there, we could do that. We've got wearable technology that tells you if somebody's fallen. We've got wearable technology that monitors vital signs. There is just so much more evolution in technology. It doesn't need to be this laborious way of working. So emphasize the significance of assessing complex problems, then looking for those solutions. Assessing complex care solutions and identifying appropriate solutions is a significant problem for several reasons. So it improves patient outcomes. It obviously does this whole promotion of independence and enhances the overall quality of care provided. It optimizes resources. It mitigates risk and complications. It helps address the ethical decision making and looking at those dilemmas, because ultimately someone somewhere has to make these decisions. And multidisciplinary collaboration shares that risk across the team as well. So when we look at that continuous quality improvement around complex care, it is the case that it needs to be reviewed regularly. Just because something's been commissioned now doesn't mean that it's going to be long term. So we're not setting up unrealistic expectations. As innovation and things come in and change, as health conditions change, it changes with it. So in summary, assessing complex care situations and identifying appropriate solutions is essential for improving patient outcome, optimizing the resources, utilization and mitigating risk, promoting that ethical decision-making and facilitating multidisciplinary collaboration and fostering a culture of continuous improvement in healthcare means that in time and efforts in comprehensive assessment, healthcare professionals can navigate the complexities of care delivery and provide the best possible care for the individuals. So let's just stop there for a minute, have a little break, and then let's come back to do the next part. Welcome back. Now let's move on to explaining the role of critical thinking for best interest of an individual. So we know, we've all heard the term best interest, I'm sure we have. So we know that we need to make those decisions sometimes in the interest of somebody. So if they're lacking capacity, maybe they've got an impaired thinking for a limited time of whatever. But ultimately, we need to work in a way which looks at informed decisions, best interests of the individuals. And we have to do that in several ways. So the first one is about analysing information. So when we make a best interest decision on behalf of somebody, we need to analyse the information that's there. So we have to, again, apply critical thinking systematically, analysing and evaluating the information from various sources. So if somebody then challenged us in a court, was that best interest legal? We're able to show that critical thinking and that analysis through that process. We need to consider multidisciplinary perspectives. So we can't just see it from our point of view, but we need to see it in a unique way from everyone else. We need to be able to evaluate the risks and the benefits of the decision. So there may be a balance sheet there that we need to do. So we've got our best interest sheet, listing everything, looking at those pros and cons. We do positive risk taking, so we need to evaluate risk. We did positive risk taking in the chapter program, so if you haven't done that, go back to that or refresh yourself on positive risk taking. And then we need to do a balance sheet approach. We need to look at the positives and negatives of a situation. We need to identify the assumption that are we being biased in any way? So, for example, here, I recently had a situation where I had a couple of member staff who were anti-drinking. We had a service user who was a known alcoholic, and they felt it in his best interest that he stopped drinking. Arguably, they're right. You know, somebody that's drinking themselves to death is never a good thing. However, it was their value and belief that made it problematic, because ultimately this person has been drinking for the last 45 years. They were able to weigh at risk, they understood consequence, they were able to make their decisions, and they were able to make unwise choices. The problem with these staff is they felt that they were right, and they made it their mission to influence everything, to show that this person lacked capacity, and therefore it was in their best interest to make these decisions. So therefore their biasness pushed the whole level of assessment to a completely different agenda. And therefore we end up within real ethical dilemmas and complexities there, because we start to look at the virtuous theory and we start to look at moral duties rather than is it in their best interest. Now, ultimately, this person's best interest was for them to carry on with the lifestyle in which they have chosen, despite the fact, I can all hear you shouting at me now, going, but if somebody's under the influence of alcohol, it's an addiction, then have they chosen it? This person was offered support. This person had been given the opportunity for therapy. This person had been given the opportunity for rehabilitation. This person had been given the opportunity to seek help. It was their choice here to refuse all of that support interventions. Therefore, what they wanted to do was continue the rest of their days just drinking themselves into an early grave. Okay, so that is an unwise decision, we know that. And therefore, it is a very difficult thing. So the person knew when we did the assessment, the person knew what they were doing. The person was able to weigh up the decision. The person was able to weigh up the consequence, and the person knew exactly the effects of drinking to excess had on their health. So at this point, they had full capacity, and trying to slide a best interest decision into somebody because you disagree with the choice that they made becomes a very difficult thing. So when we do look at this, it is about evaluating the information. It is about working with the multidisciplinary teams. And there are things that you are going to hear that you don't necessarily agree with. We are meant to have courage within our industry to stand up against things that we think aren't right or unhelpful. But we're not there to take the world on. We have to accept that sometimes people make unwise decisions. But that's the beauty of life. We're allowed to make unwise decisions. But anyway, I digress a bit to say, just think about that. Equally, problem solving and kind of understanding all of that stuff there as well. So it kind of moves us nicely into ethical decision making. And ethical decision making really does look at the healthcare professionals' considerations of ethical implications for different or difficult decisions. We are able to weigh them up against the principles and guidelines and apply critical thinking. So this individual has the absolute right to autonomy of their life and to have their well-being maintained whilst making unwise choices. So the support that was given was more around ensuring that the person remained hydrated, ensuring that the person was able to eat and drink whilst under the influence of alcohol or impaired, to ensure that the environment was clean, because obviously whilst that intoxicated, there was some problems with defecation and incontinence. Make sure that the social environment was safe. This person had fallen over on a couple of occasions and injured themselves. So just make sure the environment was safe for this person to do this. So ultimately, it is a fine balancing act, and nobody in their own sense of professional responsibility would want to make those decisions on their own. And therefore, absolutely, when I sat down and reviewed this care plan with this individual, I then spoke to the social worker, we then spoke to the mental health team, we spoke to the wardens of the property. We were able to talk to the family about rights and choices and this individual. So when this person eventually did pass, so their hearts gave up, as it would with the heart conditions, high cholesterol, that it wasn't a surprise. Everybody knew this outcome. It was a risk to the decisions that were being taken. And there are still some people saying the health service should have done more. The reality is, how much more could they have done without detaining somebody? Because the evidence would suggest that even if we detained them and sobered them up, they would go back to that unwise decisions. Because ultimately, this was a long-term lifestyle for somebody, and that's not something you fix overnight. And especially when somebody is already on an end-of-life kind of pathway, it would have been, it was their choice. It's very, I probably shouldn't have done that as your ethical decision, but anyway, I'm hoping it kind of illustrates how complicated it gets. So in summary, critical thinking plays that vital role about informed decisions, about best interests. And, when we sat down with this individual, we obviously had to find the time in between drunk and sober. And that was difficult in its own right, to be able to make the informed decisions. Because an informed decision is having all of the information. Right, good. So we need to highlight the need to anticipate and address potential challenges and obstacles in managing care packages. So again, this one was things such as risks of falls, risks of not being in, sudden death, all of this stuff. And again, as we do good day, bad day, I always like to be the person that errs on the side of what's the worst case scenario here, and how bad does bad look? How bad can this get? What does the worst outcome look like? And then we can kind of plan back from that. And by doing that, you become more risk averse, but you're able to then address potential challenges because you understand what those obstacles will be. If you're only looking narrowly, so if you're only looking at a particular problem, you're not looking holistically, you're going to miss some of those potential challenges. And those potential challenges and obstacles align to the care plan. So they're potential challenges and obstacles with physical health, with mental health and well-being, and with social. So just trying to get your head around those. And again, there may be evidence there that you need to look at in the past to help you weigh up those decisions. You're also going to collaborate that information. You're going to communicate and adapt that so people understand. And then you'll look at that continual quality improvement cycle. So now I just want you to think about those things that we've just talked about around critical thinking and problem solving. I just want you to think about a time when you've been in that situation. From everything that we've discussed around understanding that, are there things that you can think of that you would do differently? Are there things that you would want to change? And what would you do differently and why? So just think about a patient that you've worked with. Think about all these concepts and just think about, would you change anything and why? So here's the example. A healthcare facility experiencing a high rate of patient falls. The management team are concerned about patient safety and wants to address the issue effectively. They gather a team of healthcare professionals to analyse the situation and develop strategies to reduce falls. So this isn't uncommon. Falls are a problem in care homes. They're a problem in the community. Again, if they're unmanaged, you've then got problems with A&E, problems with the ambulance service, problems with assisted movement and handling. So looking at this is a useful thing. So the critical thinking here would be to analyse the data. So looking at the data, what does the data tell us? Is there a certain demographic? Is it a certain age group or a certain type of people? What are the trends and what are the causes of those? So is it environmental? Is it physical health, mental health, or is it things through maybe medication? We go through the evaluation process. We look at the reliability of the data. So who's filling it in? When was it being filled in? Why was it being filled in? Is there any evidence of biasness there? And we're going to look at some of those strategies and we're going to determine their effectiveness. So for people that have had falls, did they have a falls assessment? Did they have a falls care plan? If they did it work? Well, obviously it didn't work because they're a part of the data. So why didn't it work? What part of that care plan hasn't worked and why? Based on the evaluation and the analysis, let the team draw local conclusions. So what are the contributing factors? So is it environmental? Has everyone just tripped over a step? Is it a bit of new flooring? Can that be fixed? Or is it a bit more than that? Could it be medication reviews? Maybe everyone's on blood thinners and they're just dropping like flies. So again, is it an issue around staffing? Is it around physical health and well-being? And then reflection, so looking at your own assumptions, your biasness, looking at your limitations, and then analyze those conclusions. So your biasness, if you're managing a service, is going to be things around like, have I got the right staff? Is it the right environment? If we think about the same problem, the same situation, we go to problem solving. So problem identification then looks at that high rate of patient falls, goal setting within the teams to have clear goals, generating solutions. So again, having that from a range of solutions there, so we can be a bit more personal centered, evaluating those options, so looking at the positives and negatives of each thing, and then looking at an implementation and a monitoring team. So in this example, critical thinking allows the team to analyze data, evaluate the situation, infer conclusions, and reflect on their own thinking. Problem-solving skills enables the team to identify the problem, set goals, generate solutions and concepts, and the team can improve patient safety. So that critical thinking, that problem-solving skill is absolutely where we need to be. We're not going to worry about that case study. That's again, when we're doing our critical thinking or problem solving, we could do a SWOT analysis. So we could look at the strengths, we can look at the weaknesses, we can look at opportunities, and we can look at threats. So with those strengths, what does the organization do well? What does this person do well? What are they able to do on their own? What's the strength-based approach that we can take here? Weaknesses look at the factors that disadvantage or limit what we can do. Opportunities look at things that we can do to improve or implement. Threats look at what increases the risk. So again, doing your own SWOT analysis can really help in your care planning process. There are obviously critical thinking tools and techniques out there. So root cause analysis forms. So this is kind of root cause analysis is that because all the 7 whys, just keep digging down. Again, go online, have a Google. There's a really nice technique, the 5 whys, that allows you to dig down, and the fishbone diagram are commonly used for root cause analysis. There's a discussion matrix tool that you can use, the SWOT analysis tool, and flowcharts and process mapping to help you with critical thinking. And remember, this is about your clinical reasoning and justifications. So you need to show that you're not just saying, I do this because, but you're doing this because you've actually conducted that critical thinking. Critical thinking tools and techniques also can involve questions, brainstorming, the pastel. So pastel looks at political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal issues. And pastel is used as well in strategic leadership and management. And then there's the red team devil's advocate approach. So this is where we're looking at the positives and negatives of something. We're not going to worry about that. Okay, so finally then, the learning name there, this is different when you download it, it's because it's squashed on the screen. So final part to this then is to undertake a management and review of individual care packages, ensuring it consistently meets the agreed health and social care needs. So here you're going to review regularly, evaluate the individual care packages, assess the effectiveness in meeting the health and social care needs, engage in an open, honest communication with individuals and their family, and make necessary adjustments to the care plan and interventions based upon your evidence. So here, we need to explain the importance of ongoing review and evaluation in healthcare. Again, making sure that it is a multidisciplinary approach. We need emphasis in the need to assess the effectiveness of care packages. We need to highlight the role of open, honest feedback, and we need to discuss the significance in decision-making in care packages based upon findings. The importance of ongoing review and evaluation in healthcare is making sure that we have a quality improvement approach. So that's that change cycle, making sure that we're always evaluating, always reviewing. We need to make sure that we are evidence-based in what we do, so staying up to date with NICE guidelines, the National Institute of Care of Excellence, or the Social Care of Institute of Excellence guidelines. We need to make sure that we are patient safety reviewing, so analysing adverse events, near misses, safety incidences, and making sure that we carry out root cause analysis on any patient safety issues. We need to regularly manage the compliance, adhered standards. So that's going to be your single inspection frameworks, or we're going to be looking at the CHC national guidelines. So if you go to CHC, the Continuing Healthcare Assessments website, it's .gov, you will see the guidance, the forms, the agendas, and then the funding framework. So that's what we need to work to. The performance monitoring comes from NHS England or the funding department, so they will look, so that'll be local authorities or the NHS would review those continuing healthcare assessments to make sure that they're fit for purpose and meeting the quality standards, etc. Accountability and transparency, so making sure that people understand people's roles and responsibilities. And I think there's this emphasis on when somebody's CHC assessment doesn't go through, there's blame. So obviously making sure at the very beginning that people understand that when we're completing a CHC assessment, we're not the decision maker, we're just gathering the evidence. And obviously stakeholder engagement, showing that we're using this multidisciplinary approach, keeping everybody up to date, etc. So we need to assess the effectiveness of care packages. That's obviously, we need to monitor the person approach. We need to look at outcome measurements. We need to adhere to and evaluate compliance and adherence to care plans. We need to ensure care plans are reviewed on a regular basis. We need to make sure that there's multidisciplinary collaboration, and we need to make sure that our data is there and transparent. The role in being open and honest in communication, gathering feedback for improvement, is about trust and safety. So open and honest communication creates an environment of trust and safety. So in other words, we should never be in a position where somebody feels that they're not able to report something, because that closes doors. We need to make sure that we have insight. We need to have that continual learning environment. I did a video yesterday on the continual learning culture environment, so do watch that. It was one of the hot topics. It's about 20 ways on managing continual learning within your environment. And again, it's easy to see from an inspector's point when you go into an organization, if you're an organization of continual learning. We need to identify systems, we need to be patient-centered, we need to engage and collaborate, and we need to be more transparent. Making necessary adjustments to care plans based on evidence and findings and changing needs. So again, we need to show the individualized process for evaluating. So if somebody starts to deteriorate, how soon are we going to go in? If somebody is heading towards end of life, are we going to go to a fast track application for continuing healthcare assessments? So what's that process? Do people understand that process? When you're doing your assessments, are you saying to somebody at the very end of this, you know, look, I've done all this, however, should things change, should this happen, these are going to be the next steps. There is a really lovely technique called the Davis structured interview technique. Now, it is for children and adolescent services. And in all my training, I always say, I think it works for everything, Davis structured interview technique. It's all about logging on. So logging on is connecting quickly with the individual. Then you've got the maintaining the relationship. So throughout your interview, your motivational interviewing techniques, strengths-based approach, getting all your data and information, and then logging off. And logging off is as simple as saying to somebody, thank you very much for your time today. Before I go, I wonder, is there anything else you need to tell me or anything else that would be helpful for me to know? Because the problem with structured interviewing is people feel that they're boxed in and they can only tell you what you're trying to hear. I think I've said that right. Where by saying to somebody, look, now at the end, is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Anything else that you think is significantly important? Anything else that I should know? Because what you want is, if it fails and it goes to appeal, that's your safety netting, if you like, because they go, oh, but they didn't ask me this. Well, actually, I did say at the end of the assessment, is there anything else you think I should have known or would be helpful? And you didn't share that with me at the time. And therefore, that was your opportunity. So just remember, at the end of every assessment that you do, safety net. I wonder, is there anything else that is there anything else you'd like to tell me or anything else that I should know that would be helpful? And then obviously thank them. And then obviously let them know next step. So you should hear within an X amount of time, or if things change, if there's a significant change to your health and well-being, do let us know and we'll fast track. That's that. So optimization of the interventions. So obviously review these interventions, making sure that they understand how that's going to be reviewed. So for example, we could say, well, look, we're going to fund X, Y, Z, but the anticipated outcomes are this. But if this doesn't happen, we may need to review that. Assessing those barriers. So the barriers could be physical, mental health, or social. I won't say what I was going to say there. I'm trying to think how I can word that more elegantly. I think some of the social barriers that I've come across in my past, and again, this is just a personal experience, is unrealistic family expectations. So there seems to be this ideology that we are responsible for this person's health and well-being, and that's it. We're the only people involved. And there seems to be this lack of understanding that they still are responsible for their own health and well-being. We cannot be responsible for every decision that this person takes or makes. So just having that expectation is really key to understanding where we're going. You know, don't overpromise something, just set realistic expectations. Obviously, continual quality improvement and shared decision making as an absolute. So, final discussions then on this. Then we need to look at, or you need to think about, because we're not going to discuss this. This is a reflective piece now. So just think about how you review and evaluate your care packages. Think about the benefits and the challenges of conducting regular evaluations. I can think of many, especially over the last couple of years, and then discuss the importance of engaging all stakeholders in that process. We won't do that. So today we've looked at then implementing, monitoring, and reviewing basic healthcare assessments. So looking at why we do it, how we do it, and those processes. Here you've got a recommended reading list to have a look at. So there's some ISBN line numbers there that you can have a look at. There's some websites here for you to have a look at. So you can click on some of those if you want. And I've given you some journals and articles to have a look. So now then, the next steps are, we're going to flick through the rest of duty 1, knowledge requirements. So here then, we need to understand the structure and the functions of the human body, K1. And when we talk about the structure and the functions of the human body under K1, we are talking about the systems, the body systems. So understanding the anatomy, so the organs, the tissues, and the systems. The physiology, so what happens to those, maintaining the body there. The pathology of them, so how disease affects those. And then pharmacology, how medication is absorbed and moved around the body. Now, it does sound like a huge piece of work, and that's because it absolutely is. And it is in the module above. So you just need to go through it. Some of you will already have anatomy and physiology from your biology days, some won't. What I'm going to say here is, don't overcomplicate the anatomy and physiology part. You just need to be able to summarize your systems. So thinking about what the musculoskeletal system does, thinking about what the cardiovascular system does, thinking about what the respiratory system does. You know, let's go key systems first. So cardiovascular, respiratory, musculoskeletal, and the nervous system, because they're the ones that you're going to be dealing with mostly on a day-to-day basis. You know, most people are pain, so that's your nervous system or musculoskeletal. most of the complex problems are either respiratory or cardiac. So just getting your head around those. So go watch those videos, just understand them. When you go back to the CHAPS programs, we do vital signs, we do a lot of the other training, and we link it all together. So don't try and eat your elephant in one go. So eat your elephant in bite-sized chunks there. So K2, to understand how to support people going through the continuing healthcare process. So here, what we really need you to understand is your roles and responsibilities in supporting people going through the continuing healthcare process. Now, again, if you go online and you just Google continuing healthcare process, there are a couple of charities that have some really lovely resources. And what you would need in your organisation is to make sure that you've got your policies and procedures and that you have read those forms. Now, later on, there are some assessments in which I give you the link. So if you go up in the announcement bar, I've given you some links to the continuing healthcare assessments, and I just want you to review it. Just understand the CHC process, understand what it involves, ensure that individuals know how to access it, understand their rights, and understand how you're going to implement it. Provide that emotional support, because people going through the CHC process are going to be stressed. It causes a lot of emotional ups and downs. Family members get stressed because they're reliant upon this. So first of all, ensure you understand the processes, make sure you've got your policies and procedures. Second of all, just think about your empathy skills here on how you would want to be managed if you or a family member was going through that. Think about how you're going to advocate. So where are your roles and responsibilities within your organisation, ensuring that you're supporting people in the right way? Think about care coordination. So within your own home, how are you going to care coordinate this? And then ensure the continuity of care. So understanding the CHC process is important to ensuring continuity of care. So just make sure that as you evolve in this CHC role, you are aware of those assessment tools, you're aware of the charities and organisations, you've got a good understanding of social prescribing, you've got a good understanding of networking, and a good understanding of problem solving and critical thinking skills. K3 is understanding common encounter physical, mental health and cognitive conditions, medication treatments, and how this will, and how ill health impairs the individual and their family. So here we go back to everything we've just covered and go back to the module above in month 1, which is the nursing assessment care planning process, what we've just covered there. Think about how you are going to develop that process. Think about your understanding. Now, if you go back to the CHAPS program, in the CHAPS program, we cover ill health, we cover common health conditions, and we cover common mental health conditions. So you need to have that really good understanding of each of those. Now, at the end of the day, you're not going to be an expert in all care planning scenarios, but you should know who to refer to and kind of interventions and treatment, which isn't difficult because most physical health problems, the goal will be to manage that physical health problem. The intervention will normally be some kind of referral, medication and psychoeducation. And again, the same for mental health. Look at how you manage that risk. So again, think of good day, bad day, and think of worst case scenario. How do you manage that? How do you address the social problems? How will you optimize the use of medication? So who's doing medication reviews? How often are they happening? What's your involvement there? And how do you provide effective care? So understand all of that is key. When we think about, we talked about infection control, so there's principles around infection control. So think about your universal procedures, thinking about ill health, think about mental health, think about social impacts. So how do you prevent the spread of infection? How do you protect individuals' health? How do you minimize outbreaks? How do you comply with legislation, and how do you ensure continuity of care? K5 is understanding the principles of funded nursing care and joint packages, and how associate continuing healthcare practice can support the planning and the assessment of these. So here you need to start reading the nursing guidelines, or the funded nursing care packages and joint care packages funding guidelines. So again, in above, you'll see under the announcement that link. You can read those guidelines, and in there you will see quite clearly, and we will do this later on, we will go through this in a lot more detail. We will bring them up and we will go through them, because at the end of the day, if you understand the funding guidelines, you'll understand whether or not you need to conduct the assessment in the first place. Because if they're not eligible, there's no point going through all of this. Why put somebody through all of this if they're not going to be eligible in the first place? So understanding funding, understanding where funding comes from is key. And again, just from your own home, because if you're going to support someone's health and well-being, there needs to be funding for it. So you need to understand those, and we will run through those at a later date. A6, you need to know how and when to plan for referrals, discharge, and transitions between care. So here goes back to our care planning process. We look at our goals, our interventions, our evaluations, and our review process. And at what point in those goals and interventions we can do referrals? At what point can we say, look, we can no longer meet your needs, this is a discharge? And again, in care homes, it may be, look, your residential care, you're not this nursing care, and how much do you do before it's no longer viable for you to look after this person? And then how do you manage transition? So what's your policies and procedures between transition and making up appropriate care packages? So you need to understand the principles of primary health care. So what's the difference between health and social care needs? So understanding the roles and responsibilities of primary health care. So that's the GP, that's secondary healthcare needs, social services, etc. And understanding, again, how and what everybody does. So ensuring appropriate care, identifying those appropriate funding sources, minimising the risk of disruption, supporting advocacy and decision making, and then ensuring appropriate commissions of services. So that ensuring the commission of appropriate services might be the fact that you go down a Care Act assessment. It might be the fact that you're looking for direct payments. It might be the fact that you're looking for CHC or something. So there are lots of different funding options there. It's down to you to become an expert in those and look at those, but we will look at those at a later date, I promise. K8 on this one then is understanding the importance of how to use a range of communication methods and media available to assist with communication. So clearly you've got your duty of care under CQC for the Accessible Information Standards. In our chapter program, we do cover communication. So again, you'll have done that in there, but making sure that you're able to use that range and that you're using communication effectively, thinking about Shannon and Weaver, the sender and receiver model. K9 is the range of health and social care contract types, including personal health budgets, service commissions to treat, support. So just understanding the vast array of different funding requirements is where you need to be here. So identify appropriate care services, optimize the range of resources, advocate for those individuals, and look for appropriate funding there. Undertake your risk assessments, making sure that you're using contemporary tools, seek advice for commissioning, and just making sure that's all done. And again, that's under your nursing range. K13 then is understand the factors which affect vulnerability. So you did safeguarding in your chapter program, but bringing that forward into this, you know, looking at duty of care, making sure that you don't drop the ball in between discharge and transitioning, and looking about accountability, positive risk taking, and managing all of that. Know how discrimination behaviour to exhibit an impact this can have on individuals and commissioning. So again, just making sure that you've got your policies, procedures around promoting equality and diversity, making sure that you're ensuring individuals' rights are being adhered to, enhancing their quality of care, minimising the risk, and complying with regulatory standards. But again, as we go through the Care Act assessments, or as we go through the continuing healthcare assessments, we will make sure that we're looking into that as well. K19 there then is understand the principles of accountability and making sure you understand your role as an associate continuing healthcare practitioner. So again, your role is about promoting good governance, ensuring transparency, patient safety, promoting quality improvement, and ensuring compliance to regulatory standards. So this is a brand new standard. It's relatively new. There's not many of you in the country on this. So it's important that you look at your job descriptions, making sure that your roles and responsibilities are crystal clear when you undertake a continuing healthcare assessment. Equally, you know how to navigate social prescribing to address the needs, because it is about promoting this independence. It is about trying to optimize in healthcare. It is about problem solving. And social prescribing is basically, I've seen a problem, can I give you the solution? In a nutshell. Obviously, it's a bit more detailed than that. But again, if you've never done social prescribing before, we have got that in our VLE, so you can log online and do a quick CPD certificate in social prescribing. Understand your roles and responsibilities around the multidisciplinary team in providing commissioning care and how the multidisciplinary team contributes to a lawful assessment for eligibility for continuing healthcare. So again here, making sure that you are promoting effective collaboration, providing the evidence, filling in the forms, making sure that you're meeting those standards, that you're using evidence-based practice, and that you're supporting the commissioning services is key. You need to understand relevant legal regulatory requirements, so policies and frameworks. So you do have to read the policies and framework rules that are mandatory in continuing healthcare. You need to know how to critically appraise and reflect upon the knowledge and research of practice to make sure it's fit for purpose. So again, just making sure you're checking for bias is information, making sure that your assessment tools are from nice guidelines, making sure that you're using the most up-to-date tools when making your decisions on clinical judgments. And here, you need to know you need to know how to review individuals' health and social care packages, related to breathing, nutrition, bladder, bowel, skin integrity, mobility, communication, psychological and emotional, cognitive behavior symptoms, and control of consciousness. So those are the areas of the CHC assessment. So as we progress, we will look at those in a lot more detail moving forward. But again, under duty one, this is the skill set that you need just to be able to complete or to start that assessment process. So from today, I hope what you've done is made yourself a little list, but I will do a final summary on the things that you should be doing now. So finally then, to move forward, there is the multiple choice test that you're going to do now. It's 70% to pass. You just start that test. It doesn't show mine, but it will say start test. So you just start the test and then you go through it. And again, there's some recommended reading for the end of this duty. So you've got 35 questions. Each question is worth a point. If I hit resume, you will see you just hit the answer and that's job done. So duty one then has a fair amount of work in it for you. So just to summarize in a nutshell. So here, understand the functions of the human body. You are going to go here. You can see that that's the functions of the human body. Just take your time, go through it. I've done a video there, a recording as an overview. Understand how to support people going through the process. So there, you need to know your home's or your services, policies and procedures, and maybe you've got a little flow chart, which would be really useful to show that journey. Now, up here in announcements, I have given you this. So you've got some YouTube videos on how to fill them in, what they are, about the pathways, the fast track tools, they're there. And equally, if you click here, the one underneath, I've got the process here. So this was directly from the government website. You can look at information, how it's found, timeframes, da. So just have a read of the information that's been provided, and then it will start to make a lot more sense to you what's going on. So read your policy and procedures, make sure you understand the charities and organisations out there for continuing healthcare. Understanding common health conditions and infection control and communication was all in your CHAPS programs. That's fine. Do a bit of research about different types of funding in healthcare. So just so for your own sake, you understand where that is. And then finally, just review the process from beginning to end. So just review your CHC assessment. So the assessment tools, the paperwork in which you're going to use. I don't want you to do anything with it just yet, but just so you've got eyes on them early on. And then what we'll do next time, we'll look at the skills requirements and we'll go through the skills in looking at a CHC assessment. And again, there's that case study there for us to go through to think about physical, mental and emotional support. So hopefully that's quite a chunky lesson today that we've gone through. I will upload the recording there, so please make sure you watch it. And I wish you all the best of luck. If you need any help, do please just reach out to me and ask. So hopefully I will see you all soon when I come out to your services, and then we can start to look at this in more details within your homes. Again, if you want a recap of the knowledges, they are here for each of the PowerPoints. So again, if you want to go through those, you can. There's extended reading there as well. Magic. So all the best of luck, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye.